Hey everybody, good morning and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and disembodied hands, Quindy, Justin, and sometimes even John. How are you all today? Hello. Well, technical difficulties, Pendrake. Justin's brain difficulties, maybe, or John's brain difficulties, or all of the above. See, that's why, if my viewership tanks, it's because Ed and Dave are in the pop-up. No. Don't tell them I said that. Just you. Wow, Quindy. Wow. Sailing along on a sea of Quindy. Dang. Flying solo. Awesome. That's cool. You're an improvement, I'm sure. Morning, Julia. It's cold in here this morning. That's why I'm flanneling. I still have my Reaper shirt on, but we are flanneling over the top. It's like during the summer, this side of the house is warmest, and during the winter, it's coldest. It's like, at least in the morning. All right, cool. Well, we're doing Ogre today, guys. Morning, everybody. Morning. Let us mix up our ogre skin tones. We're going to finish our shading today. I'm going to block it in fast on both sides, and then we are going to start highlights. Because why not? And I need to like take stock of my paint and do an order. Oh. The Collins. Yes, blame the Collins. Over here, yes. Yeah, we actually finally got rain. The day before yesterday, and yesterday I actually did get to take my walk. So it's like the Sunday. Sunday was a rainy all day, which was awesome. I love rainy all days. And it it had to have been at least 2 inches of rain, because one of David's little flower pots, like his succulent flower pot, doesn't have a hole in the bottom, and it flooded. It was like an inch of water standing on top of the soil. Poor thing. I moved it into the sun yesterday, so hopefully it will not drown. Okay, so if you remember, we were doing about a 2-to-1 with ogre skin, but we were mixing in tan skin to knock back the yellow a little. Sorry, Donna. Maybe they're helping my ratings then. I don't know. It seems dubious. That seems dubious for sure. All right, darn it. Pokey tool for success here. Dang it. Wow, tan skin is just like not wanting to wake up this morning. Come on, tan skin, you can do it. I have faith. I need you. I need you for the ogre. Okay, well then it overreacted. Hey, Bob and Julie, there's the winged dragon head is more what I expect. The winged frog head was unnerving. Alrighty. So we've got our base color mixed. Now we're going to mix that up, and then we're going to build our shadow, which you remember we're using Oxide Brown, the new Kickstarter color. If you don't have that, you could probably use Ruddy Leather. That's like the closest, 9109. Or if you have the old Ruddy Brown from HD, that's almost a perfect match. But Oxide is really its own beast. So worth picking up those new Kickstarter colors, guys. Just saying. Glasses, granny glasses are online. We are moving forward. But yeah, I think we're back to sunny, or we're at least partly cloudy today. So here in the South Bay. It definitely cooled off though. We are in fall for sure. So when I add the tan skin, it darkens down and mutes out my ogre skin a little bit. In fact, I think I added a little bit too much tan skin. My tan skin got very enthusiastic at the end. So there, that drop, that's the original ogre skin. And you can see that it's much brighter yellow. But the tan skin, because it has black and some oxides in it, changes that color. It still comes off as pretty yellow, especially over the white primer. We want to have that because we need that to mix with our shadow. Aw, sorry, Cornico. Oh dear. Well, most people who tune on for this stream actually are tuning in because they know it's me, one hopes. Although we do get newbies. I'm sure that some newbies are like, what? This isn't what I signed on for. There. So I've got a 50-50 mix to make our shadow. And notice I'm just eyeballing this. Like, you should never overthink this sort of thing. Overthinking is probably like the #1 biggest mistake made by beginning and intermediate miniature painters. Thinking that it's actually important to get a perfect match and that, you know, they must mix to exactitudes. No, it is not. Art is full of inactitudes. Inaccuracies. And as long as you ballpark, you're usually pretty okay. Yo, Crowley. Hello, Rascal. All right, so let's see here. We are gonna get these shadows laid in. So we are working from a light source that is coming just a little bit off center of here. You can tell because our shadow is in line with it. The shadow that's coming down from his head. So when I'm doing this, and also the shadow of the club there. So when I'm doing this, I'm definitely referencing my actual light source and where it's falling to get an idea. And again, you don't have to be exact. You just have to be in the ballpark. Professional overthinker t-shirt. Yeah. There we go. Sweet. All right. So given that, when we look at the shadows, we see, well, you guys can't quite see, but there is a very dark shadow falling right where that loincloth is, right down the front of the leg. It pretty much is covering this entire muscle and this entire side of the leg. So this muscle plus the kneecap are visible. You can kind of see it there. You see how the light is touching these two things, but not really that interior thing? That means we're going to block all of that in brown. And we can figure that out just by watching how regular light falls on a miniature. And when you're doing that, just look at each section and paint each section. Trying to remember the entire miniature from one look isn't usually going to work for you. And since that knee protrudes out so much, there's going to be a shadow under it as well. And there's going to be a shadow underneath this muscle because it protrudes so much. So we're going to accentuate that right there. And again, the contrast, the bigger the contrast between your shadows and your highlights, and the sharper, the less blending you do, the more it's going to look like real sunlight or a bright light falling on the model. We tend to do everything with kind of a fuzzed out indirect light source. Like kind of like the sun as seen through a haze. Like that's how most of our miniatures are painted, kind of with that idea. We don't really often tackle something looking like it's extremely bright lighted. But here we are kind of doing that. So, although I've got, I think, a little bit too much fade there. There will be a little bit of a transition in sunlight. But it's pretty fast. Like the transition you see in sunlight is pretty, it happens really fast because the brightness of the light and it just casts a starker shadow. There. So up here that's reading pretty well. And here, maybe I have a little bit too much fade here. So what this is gonna start looking like is very much like a comic book style. Except that we're not using black. But that's it. See, if you look at this, doesn't it look that way? Looks very Illustrator, right? I'm going to correct a few of my pieces that I think I blended a little bit too much because I was kind of working with thinner paint here. And like I said, a little bit of blend is not bad, but you don't want that blend to like last a long time. The blend has to happen fast. So in a lot of ways, you can approximate this style by just doing like kind of block painting, and just not worrying much about blending. But if you can accomplish the blends in a very short space, then it will look even better. I'm going to cut that off a little bit more. But yeah, bright light source fades into shadow very quickly over a very short period. So that's what we're trying to like suggest. We're trying to suggest that bright sunlit look. And the shadow is going to be darker where there's a sharp cut in. Like here, this tendon really stands out. You can see it on the side there. There's a big hole. But here, as we're getting toward the top of the neck, our shadow is going to be lighter because this area is more tilted upward and this cut isn't as deep. So the shadow is actually going to be lighter there. And that's how the eye reads in this type of style. That's how the eye reads that this is not as deep a cut as that. The deepest cuts are going to be darker. The heaviest undercuts are going to be darker. The shallow undercuts, where a lot of the surfaces may be perpendicular to the light still, those are going to be lighter, like this shadow. It can be a very heavy challenge to execute this sort of thing on, say, a female model that's like smoothly muscled but not over muscled. It works best on stuff that is heavily muscled, I find, just because it's not great at catching subtlety. It's very good at catching big, bold forms. You can still do it on something with subtle. It's just going to be a lot harder for you. You're going to have to stop and think. All right, let's move this palette out of frame so we can get a better look at this guy. And I have to kind of analyze. I see there is a shadow here, so I do need to put it there. It's just real subtle. So I'm going to block it in. So again, that muscle there's a shadow that goes up here with this block of muscle, but it's not, it's really shallow. It's not a deep cut like some of these other shadows. So we've got to make sure that we're giving that visual information, accentuating that visual information. Because the sculptor sculpts a great model, and then it is our job as mini painters to put a fantastic paint job on it and to really accentuate the details that the sculptor has lovingly put in. Like, Bobby took a lot of time to suggest these subtle forms, and if I just ignore them, I'm missing a big part of the pleasure of painting the model and of the detail of the sculpt. I've been studying comic book style a lot recently, not just in, because I never go in by halves, not just comic book style as miniature painters have been interpreting it, but also actual comic book art, to kind of give me a heads up on how artists think when they are drawing, inking, and coloring comic books. Because I figure I want to do some comic book style miniatures, and actually looking at comics and the styles used by various artists is going to be the best way for me to kind of get a real idea of what's involved. So if I start talking about a lot of that stuff on this stream, don't be surprised. There we go. So again, I'm just tiptoeing through the tulips here. Like I'm kind of blocking things in where once I have, put it a different way, once I have like a big area properly highlighted, I find it actually pretty simple to use that then as a guide to paint the rest of the figure. You don't have to think as much from this point. Once you've got this stuff nailed, all you have to do is kind of compare it to the other side of the figure and kind of keep your light source in mind and correct it as you need to. Like I'm going to have to correct this area over here a bit to bring it more in line with what I'm doing. But once you've got these shadows set up here, you can kind of go, oh, okay, so this is a deep cut here, and this is a deep cut here. I need to make that shadow darker. I'm actually going to mix up a new level of shadow because my regular shadow got a little bit light here, and I think I want to go a little darker. So I'm going to do a 3-to-1 to get a darker brown so that I have that option. Never perform unnecessary analysis. There's more than enough necessary analysis to do in miniature painting. Like, there are definitely, like with this is the time to analyze when you're trying to do good shading. When you're trying to bring out the shapes of items. That's when you want to overthink. But when you're just looking at colors, overthinking is kind of a waste of your time. Close is good enough. Oh, I was going to show you, speaking of that, I was going to show you guys this piece from the art show. We actually own a painting from this artist. She's fantastic. Her first name is Nina, and I cannot remember her last name, but she's from Nigeria. She's actually an immigrant, and she does really fantastic art. And she has a piece that is a African gentleman portrait, and it does not use a single brown in its skin tones. So I'm gonna like show you guys this because I love to show you this to blow your minds. So one second, let me just get it. I took a picture of it. I asked her permission to take a picture of it at the art open studios we were at. Okay, so really cool. There is not a single bit of brown in that. It is purple, orange, and green. None of that skin tone. And the skin tone still looks right, even though it's got brown up here. That's what happens when you have serious artist chops, folks. But seriously, it is purples, greens, and oranges. And that's a dark purple. Dark, I would say dark reddish, blackish purple. Pretty impressive, huh? But that's what I mean when I say don't overthink color. Getting close to a color is good enough. Because you can do stuff like that and totally not even use brown to suggest a brown skin tone. So overthinking on your color matching, just throw it out. You're wasting your energy. Overthink this stuff. Think a lot about where you place your shadows. That's what you want to overthink. But yeah, I wanted to share that one with you because I thought that was a fantastic, like, portrait use of color. Yeah, she's pretty well known. She's had a couple of pieces featured in big shows. Obviously, she's very good. And we, David, really, like I said, we own a piece from her. And she's actually, I mean, as far as artists go for originals, she's actually not too pricey, but she's still pricey. But yeah, we did not, that one is the one that he's thought about buying it a few times. But it's not quite right for any of our indoor spaces. Although the one that we have from her, maybe I'll take a picture of that because that's also a really cool piece for the lighting. The piece we have from her actually is front and center in our main room. So it's one of my favorite pieces that David had in his collection before I came along. All right. He's definitely like, I always used to just have prints, but since hanging out with my guy, I have really come to appreciate like going to art shows and buying originals from the artists there. It's pretty cool. There we go. And then you can really see the brush strokes and the colors and everything. There we go. Darker shadows, essentially, is where I'm going here. I'm going to darken in this shadow down here and that. I'm going to have the light kind of cut off at the knuckle there. Bye, green users. I'm sorry you can't stay. But yeah, once I start working with comic book style, I'll probably do a series on it on the Patreon. And my Patreon is patreon.com/paintingbig. Thank you all so much. I know many of you are patrons. Thank you. It really makes a big difference to me. I get happy every time I get a new patron, like super happy. And I like getting, I always send an email when I get a new patron, and I get some of my best ideas for new videos and PDFs from new patrons, because I always ask them what they'd like to see or if there's something that would help them. And so you guys, now that I'm going to start doing a little bit on 28mm textures, like how much texture can you really do in 28mm? And you can thank a new patron for that. So that's patreon.com/paintingbig. And there's Quindy with the link. And thank you all for supporting me in my journey. There we go. So a little bit more shadow here. Now there will be softer highlights if mostly it's bounce light. So like here, this part of the hand probably isn't getting actual light from above, but it's getting a little bit of reflected light. So it's not going to be like as dark as the whole, like as the darkest shadow. Good, yeah, I enjoyed those too because orange is just an underrated color. Like a lot of people don't reach for it. I'm really considering painting something orange coming up, because I actually enjoy orange a fair bit. And the halfling is almost done, my halfling rogue. Although I took a bit of a break from her because I'm trying to finish my the bulk of my commissions by the end of the year. So that's a worthy goal and has somewhat disrupted my personal painting, but it's still a worthy goal. So oh, actually, one more plug also on the Patreon. If you're at the $10 level and above, I am selling some things. If you want an Anne piece, I will be selling a couple things. So far, Duelist doesn't have any bids on her at all. So, I mean, I don't know, maybe I just end up keeping her. Hoping somebody will take her. Because I really like her, but I need to, like, watch my space. I don't have a lot of, like, space to keep a lot of minis. I like her, but I think she'd be more useful for somebody as a reference for NMM. All right, there we go. Darkening down that shadow. Oh, thanks, Trouble. Thanks for the resub. Yay! Trouble is with us. Yeah, I know. Fall goes quick in some areas. We always joked in Wisconsin you got like 2 weeks of it and then everything turned gray and brown. The majority of fall was actually gray and brown. So I'm going to darken down some of this. Oh, I get it. No, that was meant as a general informative blurb for those who may not know and may be interested in owning an Anne. I totally get it and appreciate whatever support you guys can give. And if you cannot afford to bid, then don't bid. You're good. You're still my buddies. You still get all the news. Okay. Just going to bring in a little bit of this brown just to line, just to separate out that arm. This is just a great sculpt. Like if you are looking at working on skin tones and musculature, this is a great model for this. It's all good, guys. Yeah, that's why I figured I would actually mention it, because I know some people, I do for some of my my Patreon things, is like the post will pop up, but I just don't have time to read it, and so I miss some stuff. That's why I thought I would mention it. Alrighty. But yeah, buying stuff from good painters, especially when it's a model that you can easily get your hands on, can be really instructive for you, because then you can try to paint the model just like they did. And that's something that David did a lot as he was trying to get better, by the way. And Marika also. So some truly excellent miniature painters have started out that way, because it's much easier to look at the model in person and kind of see where everything is, and the brush strokes, and, you know, where the highlights and shadows are. It's just nice to have it right there. So I thoroughly, thoroughly encourage anybody to try that at some point if you have the cash to spare. It is, it's a very effective way to improve your painting. Morning, Daffodil. Oh yeah, gaming desktop and car equals broke. Yep, completely. David just bought a new gaming desktop too, and I'm so jealous. But it was because our we have a computer attached to our TV, so that we can like stream stuff on our big TV. And the computer that was attached to was just a piece of ancient crap, and so his old computer became our TV viewing computer, and he got a new one. Also, there was a game, I forget which game he wanted to play, but he was not able to handle it on his old gaming computer, so I'm still jealous. So I'm seeing a dichotomy here. There is definitely like a highlight here and a shadow on the other side, see? So I have to turn my model to see. And yeah, there's definitely a shadow there, so I need to block that in. And pretty much just see if it makes visual sense when I'm doing this stuff. If I look at it, is there something off, or can I really see what's going on? All right, legs. Any really dark shadows that I see falling on the leg, I'm gonna just paint in my darkest shadow. And that's pretty much the entire interior of the leg at this point. So this darker shadow that I mixed up, that's mostly oxide brown, I'm hitting all of the interior of the leg with it. And sometimes you'll have to turn the model to get at other parts you can't quite reach, but almost all of that is in shadow. And it's gonna scare you to put like just a big blob of shadow over areas, but if you're aiming to really see the light, then you gotta do it. And again, having a light to use as reference for where those shadows are falling is really useful. Hey, D. Clearman, long time no see. 30-month streak. Okay, D. Clearman setting the gold standard for subbing to Reaper. All right, I'm gonna hold that there, and I'm gonna block in this shadow. Goes all the way to there, and it drops down a little bit. There. That's about right. And there's a bit of it there too. Finally quieted down at work. Good. Just in time for you to resub. That's good. All right. Gonna get this shadow here of that big old honkin' stick. Alrighty. So let's get under that knee. Let's get the foot is actually mostly in the light. Let me get my positioning right. Yeah, the foot has a little bit of shadow here and shadows between the toes. But most of the foot is pretty in the light. So we'll put a dark shadow under the knee. We'll put a dark shadow underneath the wrap here, because there would be one. And a dark shadow on the inside, because there is one. Cool, D-Sparrow. There we are. And let me see again, gotta get my stick in the right position here. There's a slight shadow actually over most of this foot. It isn't just pure light because it's under the knee here. So I'm gonna kind of do a soft shadow here. Just to darken my yellow down a little bit. Except maybe on the outer edge here. Yeah, because a lot of that is under this knee, so it's going to be a little darker. And this foot is going to be out in the front. It's going to be lighter. You can see the shadow that's cast on the inside of the leg there, so we're going to not block that in. And remember, this is just blocking. You can correct this at any time. Just go and be loose with it. It's okay. It's going to be a hard shadow right behind that barrel too. And under it. Boom. And since the light is a little off-center, just a little bit off-center, the far side of this leg will also be in shadow, but I'm going to make it a little bit of a lighter shadow. Lots of shadows down there. See how that's shaping up. Oh, did I miss it? Was it Rubigon's double sub-anniversary? 1 second. Hold on, I have to go back. Yes! Double sub-anniversary, double sub-anniversary, double sub-anniversary, happy double sub-anniversary. There. Thank you, Rubigon. Pretty awesome. Yeah, sometimes I miss it. Sorry, I'm like getting into what I'm doing. Actually painting or something, and I missed a bit of chat. God's forbid, right? So guys, I was going to put Bob and Julie left, right? Green users left. I was going to put the Sphinx up as a for somebody to buy, but now I'm thinking maybe it'll be a present for Bob and Julie next year at ReaperCon. Shh. Hopefully they don't watch VODs. You are very welcome, Rubigon. A small, I can imagine a small Scottish cat trying to get my hands. It's so funny. Kitty cats are so funny. Yeah, I kind of want to do stuff for a bunch of sculptors. There's a couple sculptors I've wanted to for a while. Gina and Bobby. But it would be cool to just do a little model or something. Since I already painted that one for the stream. And it's a good one. Like I think it's one of like a really good sculpt from Julie, and also that I really liked it, so I think the paint job on it is very good too. So I just appreciate the sculptors so much. Like they're such great people. Having known them for so long in working for Reaper, they're always so helpful and encouraging. And Bob and Julie especially have taken time to help me with traditional green work and stuff, and working with like a mix of Fimo and green. So they're just excellent people in general. There. All right. Getting that blocked in. Need a harder shadow here. So it's 6 days to NaNoWriMo starting, National Novel Writing Month. And I am more prepared than I've ever been to write a book. Like, put some serious time into prep this year, where usually I just kind of go by the seat of my pants. So I'm very curious to see how my experience changes with Nano. Having done all this work, will I end up tossing it all out? You know, in the course of writing? Will it just not make sense anymore? I probably will have to change some things as I write, but I'm very curious. It's kind of like when you just start a mini and you throw yourself at it versus actually kind of having an inspiration and a plan for the mini. I'm kind of hoping that having an actual, like, having extensive notes will actually help me write better and faster. Yeah, exactly, Grand Oracle. Yeah, they're totally down-to-earth people. They're great people. I mean, they're just average hobby people who decided to, like, learn to sculpt, you know? Like, Bobby Jackson plays D&D, you know? And Christine Van Patten was, you know, a painter and then decided to, like, learn ZBrush, and now she's, like, exploded and become really, really good in a very short period of time. And then, you know, Julie has been doing it forever for old companies like Grenadier and Ralpartha back in the day. And she and Bob have also worked for the toy industry. But it's cool. And it's cool that you can come to ReaperCon and just talk to them, right? You don't have to, like, wait in line and, you know, well, you might have to wait in a tiny line, but they are there. They like talking to you. You don't have to, like, go to a special signing or anything like that. It's nice that our hobby is so very, like, the people who are good are very accessible, which helps you guys learn and get questions answered, right? So it's just to your benefit. All right. Just wanted to shade that heel because you can see how the wrap kind of falls over it. So it really probably would have a heavy shadow. And in contrast, the front of this foot is shadowed, is going to be a little bit more heavy shadowed. And the underside is going to get a very dark shadow because you can see how that gets a very dark shadow. So just paint it on. If you see the shadow, just paint it on there. I mean, make sure you're kind of in line with where your lighting is. Make sure you're lined up with your lamp a little bit, you know, at least close to where you need to be. But yep. Yeah, well, a lot of sculptors make their own tools, Grand Oracle. If you ask them, because either they'll just go and grab random crap and see what works, like at Hobby Lobby, or a lot of them actually make their own tools because they're like, I can't find a tool to do X, and I really need a tool to do X. And so they'll just make one. But yeah, Tom Meyer started, like, he was the beginning. Like, he was there. He was there when the world was made. But it's changed a lot now. You know, that 3D sculpting is becoming more and more prevalent. Getting some shadows in there. The side of the foot's going to have a little bit of shadow because it's not direct in the light, but the heel's really going to catch the light. Oh, he uses a microscope, Shadow Raven, if you didn't know. Tom Meyer sculpts under a microscope often to get those tiny details. I mean, he has insane fine muscle control to be able to sculpt at that scale, but he's using extreme magnification. Unfortunately, this sometimes makes stuff that he sculpts hard to paint. Because everything's tiny. I feel bad for beginners picking up his models and trying to do the eyes. There. That's good. For now, I'm probably going to adjust that more, but let's see here. There. Yeah, that's pretty good. Trying to get that shadow in the right place. I think that's about right. All right. Trying to get that shadow right there on that calf. That's looking good. That's looking good. There's going to be a little more shadow here because the foot is turning. We're getting there. Blocking it in. Getting it mapped out. The legs are getting there. I think I need a little more. No, that's about right, actually. A lot of this leg is in shadow on the back because it is more forward. So kind of use a combination of just general awareness of like where is something like kind of under the body, so it's going to have more shadow than highlight. And as always, be ready to adjust. I painted a fair number of Tom Meyer's sculpts from Dark Sword. And sometimes I'm like, honestly, I mean, I have to try it numerous times to paint the eyeballs. Usually involves much swearing and lots of touch-ups. And, you know, cause for celebration when they actually, like, work the first time. Let's see here. So I want that club there. And then I need to look at where my shadows are. A lot of this is going to be in shadow right here. And remember also that your light is going to be shifting when you turn the model around. So on the other side, it's coming at this angle, but now that means it's coming from this angle. So you got to remember that when you're looking at your shadows to try to figure out where they are. I'm just going to do a quick block. And then I'm going to refine it a bit. And again, just because something's in shadow doesn't mean there aren't highlights in there and lighter and darker shadows. It just means everything is down a level, like here. You can see there's a highlight and there's a shadow, but it's all down a level from up here. Oh, lots, D Sparrow, because I'm thinning my paint so much. When you thin your paint, you can try a lot before you're building up so much paint. And on a model like this, D Sparrow, with all these details being so heavily sculpted, like big cracks and crevices, I could probably paint this model 20 times before I start losing detail. Like, I mean, I could rebase coat it and, like, put shadows and highlights on and maybe, you know, do all of it. I did that on a model once. I couldn't get the hair color right, and I kept overpainting it. I would base coat it, and then I would shade it, and then I would highlight it, and then I would be like, this is not the right color, and I would start again. I managed to do, and that's a fine detail on hair, right? Really fine detail. I managed to do that 5 times, repaint the hair 5 times, base coat, shadows, highlights, and that on the 5th time, I started to see a loss of detail. But I paint with thinner paint, and this is an argument in favor of painting and thinning your paint, even for base coats. Oh, on the eyes? Lordy. Again, I'm using thin paint. I'm going to use like brown liner, and I'm going to thin it to define the shape of the eye, and then I'm going to thin my white down and just try to get that white in there. At least, I would think at least 3 times, maybe 4, with everything, with doing all the steps. But you know what? You could keep going. I mean, just don't use thick paint is the big thing. Don't use thick paint. If you use thick paint, it's going to fill in that little tiny eye socket like super. Now, that can be an advantage too. I mean, if you talk to Mariko or Derek Schubert, they redraw the eye. If an eye is too small, they'll fill it in. And they'll actually make the edge a little bit wider and then paint the eye larger in order to get it to work better. So filling in the detail is not necessarily a losing proposition either if you do it that way. Yeah, as long as you're using with thin paints, you can have a lot of tries before you seriously are globbing things up. I mean, I usually have to repaint Tom Meyer eyes at least 5 times, I'd say. And I never have noticed a loss of detail. But I'm thinning my liner down about 3-to-1 or 4-to-1. I'm thinning my white down about 2-to-1, maybe 3-to-1. Depending on how I'm doing the eye. So I'm thinning a lot. And when you thin your paint, you just don't see that buildup happen for a lot of repetitions. And it's fairly simple math. If you're thinning your paint like 4-to-1, like that buys you, you know, probably 4 extra tries before you start building it up. Like you can kind of see, oh, I've thinned the paint, so every layer is thinner, so I can do more. Because maybe you can only do 3 tries without starting to fill in detail before, but then if you thin your paint just a little, you can do 4 or 5, and then a little bit more, you could do 6 or 7, you know. Let's see here. No, I don't like inks, Grand Oracle. I mean, opaque inks are just acrylic inks. They're just like washes with super fine pigments. I just thin my regular paints to use them. I also tend not to use pure white for eyeballs unless they are super tiny, because pure white actually isn't even close to the color of our eyes, and it tends to look artificial and cartoony. It's useful on very small eyes because you want that tiny bit of white that you have left to stand out. But I'm not a big inks fan. Like, I find that I can do everything with just thinned paint, because that's pretty much what today's acrylic inks are. The pigments are a little different. They're a little more fine. And I've talked to people who really like, because the base is different as well, they like the way that a white ink flows. So I could totally see that. But I haven't experimented with them much. I have some Daler-Rowney's. I like them for glazing more than I like them for actually painting. I like them for intensifying color. And that's usually how my my fiance David as well does it. He works a lot more with them than I do. And for pupils, I just, I tend to use heavy coverage, but still paints. I thin down my walnut. Usually it's walnut, or pure black if it's a very small eye. But black, again, is kind of problematic. Can be too stark, especially for larger eyes. But you want a color that's going to cover well so that even when you thin it to the point you need it, it's going to cover. So higher coverage near blacks like walnut are a good choice. Sure. Oh, you didn't notice trouble? The shiny. The shiny's been around for about a month. Yes, we are engaged. No, we do not have a date. No, we will not have a big wedding. Really, we just kind of want to get it over with and done. I think we'd be tempted to just like do justice of the peace, except that his parents are definitely going to want to come, as David is their only child. And has been I'm sure they were wondering if he would ever get married, so. So we will do a wedding, but we will do a very small wedding. Without a lot of pomp and circumstance, because I hate pomp and circumstance. I am not that girl who always had a vision of how she wanted her wedding to be. I am not that person who wants a themed wedding. So. Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, I'm very happy. I wasn't in a hurry, and I wasn't like, I was like, yeah, we could have lived in sin forever. I would have been just fine. But if he wants to make it official, then I am all for it. So that's cool. I've gotten a lot more like laid back about my like relationship like status over the years. I have a friend who she and her they're pretty much common law married, so she does call him her husband. And she does wear a ring, but they just never did a ceremony. They're just like, yep. And Ben, her favorite announcement is, and we are again not getting married this year. No dogs right now, Crows, because Kiri passed and I haven't gotten a new dog yet. And we probably will not get a puppy until after. Like, I imagine we'll get married next year, somewhere between spring and fall. And then we're probably not going to end up with a puppy until fall or winter, or even the winter the following year. Winter, spring the following year. Which is fine. Gives us time to travel. So the back here is very complicated. It's got a lot of musculature, and I know I'm going to end up adjusting a lot. But I'm going to at least get things blocked the way I kind of think that they're going to go, and then I can always adjust them. Oh, hire a herd of dogs. I see. I could just get all my Shiloh friends to send their Shiloh shepherds. I think that would take up way too much room way too fast. Because Shilohs are large. But no, we'll have our parents, and maybe my brother will take the opportunity to get out here to California with his family. That would be the advantage of doing it in springtime, because my niece will go off to college next year fall. So if I want Pete to bring the whole family, then probably we want to get it done a little bit earlier. There we go. Just getting in a little bit more shading up here, a little bit more shading on the side here. Oh, that was a blur. We do not want a shadow there. Throw some water on it. And then when you get to the more vertically held arm, then it gets a little bit harder again. You kind of have to figure out, all right, because there's probably going to be a lot of shadow there. Like, I can see that a lot of this arm, except for this muscle here, but this is almost all in shadow because of the big club. Although, if I do it properly, there we go. There, that's a little better. Always make sure you're using the correct angle. Like, you gotta have if you're using your light as a reference, you really have to make sure that you have the light at the correct angle. Otherwise, you're going to be touching up, which is in itself not an emergency, but can be a little harder. So we're getting along, we're going along here, but I know there's stuff on the back that I need to like adjust. So I'm going to actually block in the whole underside of this arm in a medium shadow. Not the darkest yet. And then I'm going to go back and tackle this hand and kind of fix a bunch of stuff. So entire bottom of the arm blocked in shadow. And a little bit of the top of the arm underneath this shield. That's getting a little bit better. I have to really stop and ask myself, if the light is coming from this direction, what's it going to hit? What's it not going to hit? Getting there. Getting there. And you can always start by just taking your middle shadow, like the first shadow that I mixed, which is the lighter shadow. So we'll call it the mid shadow. In a pentad, it would be the mid shadow. You can always start by just, if you think it's in shadow, put the mid shadow in. The mid shadow is pretty light, all things considered, and it's easy to go back over with your midtone to bring it back up if you make a mistake. This is all pretty light on the hand, except the sides, these sides of the fingers are going to be more shaded. And maybe a little shadow there, like so. Maybe a shadow. There'll probably be lining between the club and the hand. For now, though, I'll use my dark shadow. And that club is going to be casting a shadow down there, right underneath the hand, so right on the side of the hand. So just put that in. That's turning out pretty good. I still need to do the foot on the front of that leg. We are busting ass today, though, guys. I mean, notice we still have about a half an hour, and we're getting there, right? We're getting to the point where we're blocking. We have almost everything blocked in. So we really made a lot of progress on the shadows today. Wherever I see a heavy line of shadow here, I'm going to hit it with my darkest shadow. There we go. So getting that hand kind of, that's very comic booky right now, isn't it? Because it's just got that heavy shadow and the light shadow on it, and then it's got like the mid shadow kind of blocked in on a couple of fingers back there. So it's very reading. That hand right now is reading very comic book. I think people underestimate how good comic book artists are. Like, in order to like get your shadows like right to convey the light in a given scene in a comic book panel, and to always have to be changing it. And often the pencil artist is giving you guidance, but sometimes you have to do stuff yourself. You have to make calls yourself. There we go. That's coming along very well. Pretty happy here. Gonna put a little bit more of this shadow here. There. Pretty happy with that hand now. I'm gonna put a little bit more shadow here because this cuff is so heavy. That's coming along. Losing a lot of light here. So I'll need to re-pop up some light. I'm going to have to kind of test myself and see. I blocked a lot of shadow in, and now I have to kind of figure out, all right, so there's going to be highlights in the shadows, so I have to figure those out and bring those back up. And then these top highlights, I really need to push it. Kind of moving my model to see where the light really is. This is also a subtle shadow going down the middle of this from that head of that mace. But yeah, this sort of thing can be very fun. Like, the key is to enjoy it and not to overthink, not to worry about whether you're doing it right. Just kind of get it down and then adjust it. And in the course of figuring out how to adjust it and trying things and failing and then reassessing, okay, why doesn't this look right? And then adjusting it. That's how you learn. That's how you get better as you learn to assess your own work. Rhonda made a blog post about this too, about how, you know, how we are learning, we're not learning or to improve, like a lot of the tactics to try to improve aren't actually helping us improve. And Rhonda's blog is birdwithabrush.com, and she also has a Patreon, patreon.com/birdwithabrush, and it is well worth it. It's, I mean, it tosses her a bit of support. It's $5, gets you a PDF of her blog posts with better photos, higher quality, and also just, you know, helps you support Rhonda, who is a very cool person and who puts a lot of work and thought into trying to help us all get a little bit better at this hobby and to think about it with an eye even toward traditional art and what we can learn from it. Like, I really appreciate Rhonda's insights. I think she's spot on in most of her assessments. There's Rhonda's stuff, Quindy with the Rhonda. So yeah, if you haven't checked out her blog, do so. I mean, it's free to read, and then if you really enjoy it and you learn a lot from it, I know she'd appreciate it if you tossed her some support on Patreon. I am her patron. I will say I am actually absolutely Rhonda's patron, and I love it because she'll get my brain out of the mini painting spot and back into the two-dimensional art spot and teach me again and again that the two are, like, there isn't a separation. Like, painting is painting. As I continue to block in that shadow underneath the club and go bolder and bolder with it. Sometimes if you're really scared of shadows, and I am, for a long time, like, the lack of shadows in my work, I was a great illustrator. I could line draw, but I was scared of heavy shadows. And so one of the challenges for me over the course of my painting career has been to force myself to get darker with shadows and bolder with shadows. And sometimes, because of my initial discomfort with them, I have to sneak up on it. So that's why you block it in, and then you get darker and darker and more dramatic, and, you know, really start focusing on, okay, where is the really dark shadow here, you know, like there. And forcing myself to push the depth. Because a lot of times, especially if you're not coming from an art background, adding in such dark shadows can feel really weird. Like you're wrecking the paint job, but actually you're helping the paint job. So, like, compare. I just added 2 dark shadows here. It already looks better. And as I continue to add these super dark shadows to define these muscle masses, it will continue to look better. Work on shadows first, Julia. Work on shadows to define the masses of what you're working on. Define the shapes. Shadows define the shapes. Highlights give you information about the surface, but shadows really define mass. They can make things feel heavy or light by how heavy or light they are. They convey information about the light and the direction of it and the strength of it. So I would say maybe shadows get a lot less play than highlighting in mini painting, but I think that more people could benefit from working on shadows first. Get your shadows down. Even if I did not highlight this ogre at all, the shadows alone make this model look good. Think of it that way. Then the highlight is icing on the cake. With the highlight, I can add texture, I can add detail, I can add, I can accentuate parts, I can pull attention toward a particular part. But the shadows alone still look good. Yeah, Krios, it's because Quindy's in charge and nobody has, yeah. We need to get a Reaperite to do the adjust, but they're on vacation. Thanks for letting us know, though. The key is placement. Always be on the undersides. Like, even though I'm working with a slightly oblique light, which I like, and his head is turning too, so that encouraged me to use a slightly slanted light. But just ask yourself, what's on the underneath? What's on the other side? Like, think about light as being on a side, and then on the opposite side, there's always going to be dark. And how dark you make it is going to define kind of, like, what kind of style you've got. Like, I have very diffused style up until recently. I was working with very subtle shadows until I started really pushing it. And on Noli here, I'm starting to push it. You can see how dark some of the shadows are on Noli as I'm working. But before, I had a very style like this, where it all looked like it was very illustrative, just like my 2D work. But then when you start adding in more drama and more depth and more darkness, then you start changing. Your style starts to change. So a lot of the stuff I paint on this stream is kind of old and style, like original and style. Because, that's usually, with a 28mm, that's usually what I think looks pretty good. But these bigger models, I feel like I have more room to pop the shadows, really, really take them dramatic. So it's different painting styles. It's not that one is better than the other, but learning to work with very dark shadows and to get comfortable with your shadow placement is, I think, like stage one. And eventually you'll kind of figure out the look you like once you've tried a few different things. But definitely try a few different things. Don't just settle on, like, kind of like, I tried this, it works okay, I'm going to stick with this forever, right? Try a couple different things and make sure you've got a few experiences under your belt. And that will help you a lot more. Because doing shadows differently makes you think about shadows differently. And once you start thinking about it, then that's going to inform your whole process. That's going to, like, help you internalize and really understand where shadows should go. There we go. I'm going to do this front foot because it's pretty much the only place, that and these interior fingers here, which still need work. The fingers still need work, but yeah, I would start just with shadows because you can suggest a lot of information with shadows. It used to be, and in mini painting, in many arenas, it still is kind of, shadows are a very slip shot and scatter shot approach, right? You put a wash on and then you highlight it. It's like everybody's just kind of dancing around shading. Like actually spending time on shading. But spending time on shading is one of the best things you can do for your model. So there, I've got that hand a bit more defined. Now you can see how that shadow really makes the fingers stand out. Now let's get this foot. I think this foot is pretty much the one thing, and then it's all refining. That's a cute idea, Pendrake. I think maybe that would come off a little bit obsessive though. Like, I hate to say it, but my wedding is really not about my deceased dog. and having her front and center would probably make people wonder about like whether I'm really dealing with my grief very effectively. It's cute though. It's a cute idea. There we go. Getting that adjusted. Okay, foot. So if I orient my light source correctly, and I look at that foot, you can see that I've got a heavy shadow back on this heel. So let's just fill that in. There's a little bit of shadow right here. And I'm going to get the underside of the toes as well, and between the toes with my dark shadow. Alrighty. Yeah, jury's still out on which litter I'm going to get a puppy from. I'm talking to a couple of different people. And of course, sometimes litters just don't take. So going to outline the toenails. Often I will do that. I will take my mid shadow or my dark shadow and I will outline the toenails. Usually you, when they're sculpted, you do want a little bit of a shadow to make them stand out. You have to be careful to make sure that you aren't making them stand out too much. Now let's take our mid shadow in and put just a little bit a breeding that happens, but no puppies are produced, Pendrake. Whether the timing is off, or the semen count was low, or whatever. I won't go into dog reproductive details on stream. This is not really the place for that, but there are litters that just don't happen. And then sometimes you try again, or you try with a different stud. But yeah, so there's no guarantee. That's kind of why I'm keeping my options open, is there's no guarantee that the litter that I really want or think I really want will happen. Alrighty. So a little bit of shading there just to bring out some details on the top of the foot. But I kept it really lightweight. And once I'm bringing the highlights in, I may rethink those shadows and just work with highlights instead on that foot. But I needed a little bit of dimension. I need a dark shadow right under this anklet also. Oh dear. Yeah, I'm sure with all the stuff that Rana or Ed says, me and dog reproduction would be like very, very low key. But yeah, there's always the chance that the litter that I'm interested in will not produce puppies. So I am talking to a couple of people just in case. My friend Bridget is going to have a litter, hopefully, that it's not a Kiri, like a direct Kiri relation litter, although when it comes down to it, all of our Shilohs have common ancestors, you know, if you go back far enough. But it's an important litter for the gene pool, and it might produce the temperament I want, so I'm kind of looking at that one too. Unfortunately, it will not give me a smooth coat. It would actually give me a plush coat, a longer coated Shiloh, and I'm not a big fan of that. I'm like the one person in our community that hands down wants a smooth coat every time. I don't like the long coats. They're just too much work. Though most people want a long coat because they're beautiful, but for me, I would always rather a smooth. There we go. That's a little bit better. See that dark shadow to pull out that detail of that cuff. They're cute. They're just more work. And the problem is, yeah, as long as your dog is intact, keeping it from matting is pretty easy, actually, for Shilohs, because they don't have it's not a collie coat or anything. But the minute you spay or neuter and you take those hormones out, what I find is that the hair becomes more brittle and more prone to matting. Happened with our plush, and with a couple others I know. The grooming requirement shoots right up because, hormones interact with a lot of your systems. And our Leo, while he was intact, maybe we brushed him a couple times a week. He did not mat, except around the floofy ear fur. But once he got neutered, it was suddenly professional grooming every month, or there were going to be crazy mats. Yes, correct. A litter of puppies produced by a pairing of an adult dogs. So if you are on a given litter, then you are on a given pairing. And in Shilohs, because they are popular but still a very small breed, you are likely waiting 6 months to 2 years to get a puppy. So you can be on a litter for a long time. There we go. Luckily, I have a lot of traveling and, fun stuff that I want to do before we get a puppy, because I don't want to have to worry about the kenneling and all that. So. Yep. Well, at least you have that conversation, Kerniko, and you're not like a whole bunch of kind of dorky people who get one and don't have time for it. Because it's a commitment. To have the dog grow up to be what you most hope it will be, it's a time commitment. There's socialization and training. And people just don't think about that. Yeah, have fun, Shadow Raven. There we go. Train your cats to look after the puppy. I mean, be aware, Pendrake, that since she has cats, any puppy that Kerniko would get would think that it was a cat in no time. It would be obvious to that puppy that it was a cat. So the cats are already going to train the puppy. Although I don't know about the litter box. That's the other problem with dogs, is that going to gross you all out here, but many dogs consider the litter box a place for food. a place to get a quick snack. So that can be problematic as well. Unless you can gate off the litter box so your dogs can't get to it. Socialization's super important. That's cool, Julia. All right, we are almost to the stopping point. And I am just continuing. Now we've got everything, at least with a first level of shadow on it. I could add a bit more down here. Probably do need a bit more down here. There's a lot of places where I need a bit more. There. Ah, this leg. We totally forgot this leg because it's under the hand. Let's see. A lot of that's going to be shadow. Because the hand is going to cast a shadow there. Let's see here. Get that correctly positioned. Look at the leg. There. There. That's roughed in. Yeah, that's actually, the litter box is the main reason I'm not looking at getting a cat again for a while. Like, I don't know, I may consider getting a cat again after I can no longer keep dogs. Like after I'm old enough, older and can no longer have a dog of the type I want, but we'll see. I had cats for many years and they're wonderful. But in the end, it turns out I really am more of a dog person. My favorite cats are very dog-like cats. All right, there we go. Got that blocked in. Do we miss any other spots? I don't see any other missed spots. Right now, the front is definitely still more successful, reading better than the back is, but that's okay. We have time to work on it. So what we did today, we talked a lot about shading and how it defines masses and how if you are a newer painter, it is worth your while to work on your shadows even before you work on highlighting techniques. It can really, shadows convey the impression of weight and mass to an object. They convey solidity to an object. They define shapes and they just give you a lot of useful information about the light and, you know, how where the figure is in relation to it as well. So it is worth your time to work on your shadow techniques. Just forget your highlights for a while and see what you can do with just shadows. As I pointed out, even, you know, given I need to touch up a lot of this stuff and make it a little bit nicer, but in general, like I could stop here and it would still be a great looking figure. Like if I didn't highlight anything, I would still have enough values, different values, that all of the masses would be defined and everything would stand out and all the details would come out. So that's really what you're trying to do with your masses, with your shadows, is define mass, define weight, define shape, give a feel of the model actually being in the real world because shadows are falling and light is falling. And really, it's fairly simple to start. You just have to remember that anything on the inside or underside of areas, when you have a normal above light source, anything on the inside or underside is going to be dark. And the deeper the cut, the darker the shadow. And the more shallow the cut, the lighter the shadow. So there's your starters. That's what we talked about today, guys. And now we are ready to wrap it. Tomorrow, we are going to do our new Hellborn Warlock, Vitanis. We're going to continue the work on his skin and bring it up into the realm of oranges. Because we worked on reds last time. Red-ishes. I still have... dropping everything. Yep. Yeah, that's right. We're going to bring it up with more Phoenix Red and oranges. It'll be fun. No crow's nest this afternoon. Michael Proctor is slacking off. Got it. So fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for coming out today, and I will see you again tomorrow for our segment on this guy. And I hope you all have a fantastic day and, you know, find some fun things to do today to make yourself like a happy person. Alrighty. Yes, love to you all as well. Have a really good day. Thank you, Quindy, for all your hard work on the Reaper streams, by the way, over the last week. We really appreciate you. All right? Have a great one, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow morning.